The night shift on the orbital station horizon was always quiet. Stars hung like cold lanterns outside the wide viewing windows, and the hum of machinery filled the silence. Daniel sat at his console, watching the streams of numbers and wave patterns that represented the endless chatter of the universe. Most of it was noise, static, pulses from dying stars, the faint whisper of cosmic radiation. Daniel leaned back in his chair. He had been at the station for almost a year, and in all that time, nothing unusual had crossed his console. His job was important, but it was also slow, still. He liked the quiet. He liked knowing that somewhere in the darkness, something might be waiting to be found. At his 16 station time, his console beeped. It was a short, sharp alert, the kind that meant a signal had been caught but not yet identified. Daniel leaned forward and tapped the controls. A wave pattern appeared. It was strange. Too organized to be natural, but too broken to be a normal transmission. He ran the filter once, twice, 3 times. Slowly, faint sounds began to emerge from the static. The voice, if it was a voice, was distorted. It rose and fell with a rhythm that spoke of urgency. He could not understand the words, but he felt the tone. It was desperate. It was asking for help. Daniel's heart began to race. He opened a secure channel to the main communications hub on Horizon. "This is monitoring Bay 2, he said. "I have a possible distress signal from deep space. Coordinates attached, requesting verification." The reply came minutes later, calm and measured. "Bay 2, we see your data. We will run a deep analysis, maintain monitoring." Daniel stayed at his console, eyes locked on the wave pattern. He tried to imagine who or what was speaking. The signal was coming from far beyond the mapped trade lanes, a place marked in human star charts as the outer silence. Ships rarely went there. Some said there were dangers, but no one could prove it. An hour later, a new voice came through his channel. This time it was Commander Hayes, the senior officer on duty. "Bay 2, we have confirmed the signal is artificial. Unknown origin. Language not recognized. Good work." Daniel felt a spark of pride, but it was quickly replaced by curiosity. "What happens now, sir?" "Now," Hayes said, "we send it to the Earth Council. They decide whether to respond." That was the moment Daniel realized how rare this was. Humanity had been in space for more than 200 years, but true distress calls from alien species were almost unheard of. There had been a few cases, but most turned out to be misunderstandings or old automated beacons from extinct civilizations. This was different. This sounded alive. Over the next day, experts from Earth and the colonies worked on the signal. They cleaned the static, compared the structure to known languages, and tried to piece together fragments of meaning. The more they worked, the clearer the message became. It spoke of an attack. The voice, still unknown, spoke of enemies without mercy, a force that came like a flood and stripped worlds bare. The message repeated again and again, as if the sender feared it would be lost in the void. It ended with coordinates and a final plea. Daniel sat in the observation lounge that evening, watching the glow of Earth far below. He thought about the voice in the signal. Somewhere out there, someone was watching their world burn and hoping that a stranger might come. It was a fragile hope. Sent across light years, news spread quickly through the station. Crews whispered about the signal in the mess hall. Some believed it was a trap, a way to lure ships into the outer silence. Others thought it was a test, maybe even a challenge from an unknown power. But there were also those who felt what Daniel felt, a pull, a sense that they could not ignore it. 2 days later, a secure announcement came from the Earth Council. The signal had been confirmed as genuine. The origin world was far from any human colony, and its people had never made contact with humanity before. The council was divided. Some argued that the distance and danger made it impossible to help. Others believed that the very fact it was dangerous was the reason to try. Daniel was called into the communications briefing room. To his surprise, several senior officers were there, along with a holographic link to the council chamber on Earth. "Daniel," one of the council members said, "you were the first to identify this signal. You have a skill with alien patterns that our team believes will be important if we make contact." Would you be willing to join a mission to investigate? Daniel felt the air leave his lungs. A mission to the outer silence was almost certain to be dangerous, but he also knew that if he said no, he would spend the rest of his life wondering what happened to the ones who had sent that message. I will go, he said. The council member nodded. Very well. The Aurora will leave within the week. It is a small but fast exploration vessel. Captain Mira will command the mission. You will be responsible for communication and translation. Your task will be to establish a link with whoever sent that call. When Daniel left the room, the station's corridors felt different. The quiet hum of machinery seemed louder, the distant stars sharper. For the first time in his career, he was stepping out from behind a console and into the unknown. That night, he stood by the viewport again, looking into the endless black. Somewhere beyond those stars was a world in trouble. Somewhere out there. The voice from the signal was waiting for an answer. Daniel made a silent promise. If humanity's ships reached that place, they would not come with empty hands. They would come to help. And in the deep cold of space, the faint signal kept playing on a loop, carrying its message toward the stars, unaware that someone had finally heard it. The Aurora floated in her docking cradle like a silver spear, her hull catching the glow of the station's lights. She was not large, but her engines were powerful enough to cross deep space faster than most ships. Every system on board had been checked twice, then checked again. A journey to the outer silence was no small thing. Daniel walked through the docking bay with a small bag slung over his shoulder. He had been given 3 days to prepare, and most of that time had been spent in briefings. The mission's purpose was clear: travel to the source of the signal, establish contact, and offer aid if possible. But there were also warnings. The outer silence had a reputation for swallowing ships, navigation hazards, uncharted gravity fields, and rumors of hostile forces made the area dangerous. Captain Mira stood at the base of the boarding ramp. She was tall, with short dark hair and a calm expression. Her eyes studied Daniel the moment he approached. You must be Daniel, she said, our communications expert. Yes, Captain, Daniel replied. Mira nodded toward the ship. We leave in 2 hours. Once we pass the last beacon, there will be no quick return. Are you ready for that? Daniel hesitated only for a heartbeat. I'm ready. Good. Welcome aboard the Aurora. The crew was small, just 12 people. There were engineers, pilots, medics, and security officers. Everyone had their own role, and everyone knew the risks. In the mess hall, Daniel met Raj, the chief engineer, who spoke with quiet confidence about the ship's systems, and Leon, the navigator, who had a reputation for threading ships through dangerous routes others would not dare attempt. The mood on board was a mix of focus and tension. Nobody said it, but everyone understood that this mission was different. This was not about trade, exploration, or routine patrols. This was about answering a call from strangers in need. When the departure time came, the Aurora's clamps released with a soft shudder. The engines roared to life, and the station fell away behind them. Earth glowed like a blue jewel in the distance. Daniel watched it shrink until it was just another point of light among millions. For the first few days, the journey was uneventful. The Aurora glided through mapped space, past the outer colonies and into the dark stretches between the stars. Daniel spent most of his time in the comms room, studying the original distress signal. The more he listened, the more he began to notice small patterns, repeated sounds, small pauses, and changes in tone that might be part of the alien language. One evening, while Daniel was at his console, Mira stepped in. Any progress? She asked. Some. Daniel said, I think the message was recorded under heavy stress. Whoever sent it was probably speaking fast, maybe even from a damaged transmitter. But I'm starting to match a few sounds that could be numbers. That might help when we meet them. Mira leaned against the doorway. Good. We may need every advantage we can get. Leon tells me the route ahead gets tricky. Gravity pockets, debris fields. And there's another thing. Daniel looked up. What is it? Mira's tone stayed calm, but her eyes were sharp. Long-range scans picked up faint energy traces near the outer silence border. They did not match any civilian traffic. Could be nothing. Could be someone watching. Daniel felt a chill. Do you think it is connected to the signal? I do not know. But I do know we are not turning back. As the aurora pushed deeper into uncharted territory, the view outside changed. The stars grew sparse in some regions and clustered thick in others. Strange nebulae cast faint colors across the hull. At times, the ship drifted past enormous fragments of rock that spun slowly through the void, some scarred with old impact craters, others shining with metallic veins. One night, Daniel joined Raj and the security officer named Tomas. In the observation lounge, the glass canopy above them gave a clear view of a massive derelict drifting nearby. It looked like part of an ancient ship, its edges jagged and twisted. No lights, no movement, only silence. That wreck has been here a long time, Raj said quietly. Space eats everything, but some things last longer than they should. Tomas kept his gaze fixed on the derelict. If the outer silence has ghosts, that is one of them. The next day brought the first real challenge. Leon detected a dense cluster of asteroids blocking the most direct route. The cluster was unstable, with unpredictable motion that could smash a ship to pieces. Turning back would mean adding weeks to the journey, but Mira refused to thread us through. She ordered, for ours, the Aurora moved at a crawl, weaving between spinning rocks and sudden debris showers. The engines flared and cooled in rapid bursts as Leon adjusted their path. In the comms room, Daniel gripped the sides of his chair, listening to the constant stream of navigation updates. One wrong move could end the mission before it truly began. By nightfall, they cleared the cluster. The crew allowed themselves a rare cheer. Mira came over the intercom. Good work, everyone. The hardest part of the route is behind us. From here, we head straight for the source. But Daniel knew the real danger might still be ahead. 2 days later, while running a deep scan, the ship's sensors picked up a faint repeating pulse. It was not the distress signal, it was sharper, more precise. Tomas, now on watch in the security station, called Mira to the bridge. This is a tracking signal, Tomas said. It is not ours, and it is close. The crew fell silent. In deep space, being tracked was never a good sign. Mira ordered a change in course, a slow drift through a nearby dust cloud to mask their position. Ours passed without incident, but the unease lingered. Whoever had sent that pulse had been close enough to watch them. Daniel returned to his work with new urgency. If there were hostile forces near the outer silence, they needed to reach the signal source before anyone else could interfere. The voice from the message still played in his mind, the tone heavy with fear. One quiet shift. While listening again to the recording, Daniel caught something new. It was a change in pitch near the end, almost like a second voice overlapping the first. He isolated it and listened closely. It was softer, but it repeated a single sound 3 times. He went to Mira. Captain, I think there is more to the signal than we thought. There may have been more than one person sending it. Mira studied the data. If that is true, we might not be dealing with just one survivor group. There could be many. Or, she did not finish the sentence. As the Aurora moved toward the coordinates, the crew prepared for what might come next. Weapons were checked, shields tested, and escape plans reviewed. Everyone felt the weight of what they were doing. Daniel stood by the viewing window in the comms room as the stars slowly shifted. Somewhere ahead was the world from the signal. Somewhere ahead, lives hung in the balance, and somewhere, perhaps not far away, something else was watching the Aurora move closer. The mission was no longer just about finding the source. It was about reaching it before anything else could. The Aurora left the dust cloud and moved deeper into the region humans called the outer silence. The name had always carried an air of mystery, but for the crew it was no longer just a name, it was a place where every shadow seemed alive, and every signal from the ship's sensors carried a trace of the unexpected. The stars here looked different. Some burned faint in red, others glowed in icy blue. Vast empty spaces stretched between them, and sometimes they passed through thick clouds of drifting particles that shimmered faintly. Under the ship's lights, Daniel had never traveled this far from human space before. Even the quiet hum of the Aurora's engines seemed smaller in this vast and silent region. In the comms room, Daniel sat with his console glowing faint green in the dim light. The distress signal still played on a loop, but now he was almost certain there were two voices in it. One voice sounded urgent and commanding, while the other was softer, as if spoken by someone younger or weaker. He marked each sound, building a chart of patterns and repeats. Captain Mira visited often, asking for updates. Any chance we will understand them before we arrive? She asked one morning. I cannot promise, Daniel replied, but I think I can at least prepare us for basic greetings and responses. That might help when we meet them. That will do, Mira said. We may not get a second chance to make them trust us. By the fourth day in the outer silence, the Aurora began to encounter strange phenomena. Leon, the navigator, called the captain to the bridge when the ship's sensors detected massive gravitational fluctuations with no visible source. It felt as if invisible tides were pulling at the vessel. The crew adjusted the stabilizers, but the strange shifts kept happening, like the silent breath of something ancient moving through the dark. Not long after, they passed a cluster of enormous structures floating in space. At first they thought they were natural formations, but closer scans revealed smooth surfaces, metallic edges, and patterns that suggested design. They were ruins, drifting aimlessly, too damaged to identify their original purpose. Raj spoke quietly over the intercom. Whatever built those had technology far older than ours, and far bigger. The sight left the crew uneasy. If the distress signal had come from people living among such dangers, it was no wonder they had sent it in desperation. Daniel continued to piece together parts of the message, slowly. He began to recognize what might be numbers, directions, and even a word that could mean danger. But he also noticed something else in the background of the recording was a faint mechanical hum. It repeated at regular intervals. When he filtered it and compared it to known data, his results were troubling. It sounded like the signal of a machine swarm. He brought this to Mira. She listened carefully and frowned. If you were right, it means the attackers are not just ships or soldiers. They are machines, and if they are machines, they do not stop unless they are destroyed. The mood on board shifted again. The crew had already guessed they might face danger, but the thought of an enemy that did not feel fear or mercy weighed heavily on them. 2 days later, the Aurora approached the edge of the target system. Leon adjusted their course to approach from a high orbital angle, giving them a view of the planet before committing to a landing. The moment they came out of faster-than-light travel, the sensors lit up with activity. The planet below was a pale blue world, but it was scarred. Dark burn marks covered parts of its surface, and massive craters marked where cities had once stood. In orbit, a handful of alien ships drifted together. Some were heavily damaged, their hulls blackened and bent. They are barely holding together. Raj said quietly from engineering. Mira gave the order to open a wideband hail. Daniel sent out a greeting in both human language and the sounds he had guessed from the distress call. Minutes passed before an answer came. The voice was distorted but clearer than the original signal. The translation software worked quickly, combining Daniel's notes with its own algorithms. The alien's words came through slowly. This is Aaron of the Solari. Identify yourself. Mira stepped forward. This is Captain Mira of the human vessel Aurora. We received your distress signal. We are here to help. There was a long pause. Then Aaron spoke again. We did not expect an answer. Our enemies, they are many. They will return soon. The transmission cut to a video feed. Aaron appeared tall, with silver-toned skin and large dark eyes that reflected the light. His face was lined with exhaustion, and behind him, the interior of his ship looked damaged and dimly lit. Mira's voice was steady. We need to meet in person to understand your situation. Can we land on your planet? Aaron hesitated. We have little safety left on the surface, but we will guide you to the largest surviving settlement. If you truly mean to help, you must see what we face. Coordinates arrived moments later. The Aurora descended through the planet's thin clouds, giving the crew their first close look at the damage Entire stretches of land were burned black. Towers stood like broken teeth against the sky. The settlement they approached was surrounded by crude barriers, with only a few functioning defense turrets. On the landing pad, a group of Solari waited. Their clothing was simple, patched from wear, and many carried makeshift tools or weapons. Aaron stepped forward as the humans disembarked. His eyes studied each crew member before settling on Mira and Daniel. "You are far from your home," Aaron said, "and yet you came." Daniel replied, "Your message reached us. We could not ignore it." Aaron's gaze softened slightly. "Then I will show you what is left of our world." They walked through streets that were little more than rubble. Children peeked from behind shattered walls, their eyes wide with curiosity and fear. In the center of the settlement was a large, hastily repaired building where survivors gathered. Inside, Aaron explained the threat. "The machines come in waves. They strip metal, stone, and even the ground itself. Our weapons cannot harm them fast enough. Each attack leaves us weaker. Soon, there will be nothing left." Daniel listened carefully, noting every word and tone. He realized that the softer second voice in the distress call had likely been a younger Solari, perhaps a child, repeating a final plea. That thought stayed with him. Mira asked about the machines. Aaron described them as swarms of small ships with cutting beams, coordinated by a central core somewhere in orbit or beyond. Destroy the core, and the swarm will fall silent. But we cannot reach it. Outside, the sky was already darkening with the approach of night. The humans returned to the Aurora to prepare their next move. They now understood the danger, and it was worse than they had imagined. But they had also seen the determination in the eyes of the Solari. As Daniel looked back at the damaged settlement, he thought of the original message again. It had traveled across the void, carrying only a fragile hope. Now, that hope had a face, and it was counting on them. The next morning on the Solari world began with a heavy sky. Gray clouds hung low, and the air carried the smell of smoke from burned forests beyond the hills. The humans of the Aurora had slept little. Every sound outside the ship made them tense. They knew the machines could arrive without warning. Captain Mira gathered her crew in the briefing room. A projection of the planet hovered in the air, marked with red points where Aaron said the swarm had struck before. "Our first goal," Mira said, "is to understand the enemy's patterns. We need to know when and where they strike. If we can predict their movements, we can plan a defense." Daniel was seated beside the display, running translations of Arn's reports. "They come in groups of hundreds," he explained, "and they don't always attack the same place twice in a row. Sometimes they appear far from their last target, almost as if they want to keep the Solari guessing." Raj, the engineer, tapped the table. "That means they have fast travel or multiple launch points. Either way, it's going to be hard to block them." Mira nodded. "Then we will focus on buying time for the Solari. Every day they survive gives us more time to find the swarm's core." A short tone from the comms panel interrupted the meeting. Daniel checked the signal. It was Aaron. His voice came through, tight with urgency. "They are coming. The Sky Scouts just sent word." The quiet before the storm hung heavy over the pale blue planet. On the surface, the Solari settlement buzzed with nervous energy. Repairs had begun on broken defenses and damaged buildings. The survivors worked side by side with the humans, their hope growing but shadowed by fear. Aboard the Aurora, Captain Mira stood on the bridge, eyes fixed on the deep space monitors. The planet's atmosphere shimmered under the pale sun, but it was the space beyond that worried her most. The ship's long-range sensors had detected movement. Something vast was coming. "Swarm detected," Leon reported calmly, fingers flying across the controls. "Distance 7 million kilometers and closing fast. Multiple small vessels. Low signature but high speed." Daniel stood beside Mira, his heart pounding. He had spent days listening to the distress call, feeling the desperation in every word. Now, the danger was no longer a distant voice, but a fleet racing toward them. "Prepare defensive systems," Mira ordered. "Raise shields and arm point defenses. I want every available weapon ready." The crew moved quickly, trained to respond, but even with all the preparation, there was an air of uncertainty. The Aurora was an exploration ship built for speed and science, not war. Below, in the settlement, Aaron gathered the Solari leaders. "The machines are near," he said, voice steady but grave. "We must hold the line. The humans bring hope, but it is up to us to fight with all we have left." The Solari worked tirelessly, installing whatever weapons they could salvage. The Aurora's engineers shared blueprints and tactical advice. Raj and Tomas helped build makeshift energy shields to reinforce the walls. As the fleet of needle-like ships burst into sensor range, the tension turned into action. The swarm was fast and relentless, darting through space like a black storm. Each ship was small, armed with cutting beams and missile pods, moving with precision that no living pilot could match. The Aurora fired the first shots, rapid pulses of energy that tore through the swarm's front lines. The small craft exploded in showers of sparks and debris, but more came in their place, flowing forward like an unstoppable wave. Mira's voice was calm but firm. "Keep firing. Focus on the edges. Try to break their formation." Daniel worked with the communications team to send warnings to the settlement and coordinate the defense turrets. The humans and Solari fought together, a blend of strategy and courage. The battle raged for hours. The swarm attacked in waves, striking the Aurora, then veering toward the planet's surface. The defense turrets fired non-stop, and soldiers with energy rifles defended the barriers. At one point, a burst of missiles from the swarm hit the Aurora's shield. The ship shook violently, alarms blaring. Mira gritted her teeth. "Damage report," Raj's voice came steady despite the chaos. "Shields holding, but weakening on the starboard side. Structural integrity at 80%. We can hold for now." Mira nodded. "Then hold. We must buy time for the settlement." Daniel's eyes never left the comm screens. The swarm's patterns were fast but predictable. The machines moved in tight formations, their signals linked to a central control. Daniel thought of what Aaron had said about a core somewhere. If they could find and destroy it, the swarm might fall apart. "Captain," Daniel said, "I think I found something." There's a signal pulse in the swarm's formation. It repeats at regular intervals, probably the command core. Mira's expression hardened. "Can we target it? We don't know the exact location, but it should be in orbit or just beyond," Daniel explained. "If we can draw part of the swarm toward that area, we might be able to strike." "Then that is what we will do," Mira said. "Prepare a small strike team and run the plan." The crew worked quickly, using the planet's asteroid belt as cover. The Aurora maneuvered to lure the swarm into the cluster. The machines followed, focused on destroying the ship. Once the swarm entered the field, the Aurora fired remote charges that set off a chain reaction. Massive rocks exploded, sending shock waves that shattered many of the small attackers. The trap worked better than expected. Swarm numbers dropped sharply, and the surviving ships scattered. The humans and Solari pressed the attack, rushing to the coordinates Daniel had found. In orbit, the Aurora detected a large, heavily shielded object. The command core, missiles, and energy blasts from the ship struck the core's defenses. The battle was fierce, but the crew's determination was stronger. With a final, massive explosion, the core was destroyed. The swarm's ships lost their link and fell silent, drifting powerless. On the surface, cheers erupted. The survivors hugged and wept. Daniel looked out at the sky, now clear of the black storm. Captain Mira smiled. "Though tired, we answered the call. This is only the beginning. But today, we saved the world." Aaron approached Daniel. "Your people are brave. You gave us hope when all seemed lost." Daniel nodded. "Humanity does not turn away from those who need help." The bond between humans and Solari had been forged in fire across the stars. Their story would echo as a reminder that even in the darkest places, hope can shine bright. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. The pale blue planet beneath the Aurora still bore deep scars from the swarm's attacks. The settlers and survivors moved among ruins, repairing what they could, but the threat of return haunted every moment. Captain Mira stood on the bridge, staring out at the horizon. The Aurora hummed softly around her, a quiet contrast to the tension below. Daniel joined her, carrying a datapad filled with new information they had gathered during their time with the Solari. "We have technology that could help," Daniel said. "Their weapons and defenses are strong, but they do not have the same flexibility we do. Humans can adapt quickly." Mira nodded. "The Solari have been fighting for years. They know how to survive, but they are running out of time." Together, the humans and Solari began sharing knowledge. Engineers from the Aurora worked alongside Solari technicians, teaching them how to modify existing weapons and build new shield systems. Raj and Leon led teams to design adaptive defenses that could respond to the swarm's attacks in real time. Daniel and Aaron spent hours in strategy meetings, translating the alien language and learning about their culture. Despite the hardships, the Solari were proud and determined. They welcomed humanity's help but also held tightly to their own identity. The days passed quickly. Every moment was filled with work repairing turrets, training fighters, and scanning space for signs of the swarm's return. One evening, as the sun dipped below the ruined skyline, Daniel walked with Aaron near the settlement's edge. Children played nearby, their laughter a rare and precious sound. Aaron smiled faintly. "You have given us hope," he said quietly. "More than weapons or plans, you remind us that we are not alone." Daniel looked out at the stars beginning to twinkle in the darkening sky. "That is what we do. When someone calls for help, we answer." Suddenly, the ship's alarms rang out, sharp and urgent. Back on the Aurora, Mira's voice echoed over the comm system. "Swarm approaching again. This time, they bring reinforcements." The crew rushed to battle stations. The new wave of the swarm was larger and more organized. They moved like a shadow across space, seeking to destroy the newly built defenses. But the humans and Solari were ready. Adaptive shields absorbed energy blasts. Missiles found their targets faster than before. Fighters flew with skill and confidence. In the thick of battle, Daniel worked with the communication systems, jamming some of the swarm's signals and decoding others to predict their movements. It was a game of cat and mouse, but this time the humans held the edge. Hours passed, and the swarm's attacks grew weaker. One by one, the small ships fell until silence returned. Exhausted but victorious, Mira addressed the crew. "Today, we showed that when we work together, we can face any threat." The Solari leaders gathered around the Aurora's bridge console. Aaron spoke with deep gratitude. "You brought strength, but also courage. Our people will survive because of you." Daniel nodded. "And humanity will remember this place. We are part of your story now." As night fell, the stars seemed brighter. The battle was not over, but hope burned stronger than ever across the galaxy. An answer had echoed, and it would not be forgotten. The massive alien fleet stood in the dark void beyond Earth's orbit, their ships glinting under the light of the distant sun. From the bridge of the Horizon Dawn, Captain Ray could see the largest vessel, the one carrying the Council of Lutheran, turn slowly toward them. There was no sign of weapons charging, no sign of an attack, but the tension in the air was heavy. "Open a channel," Ray said, his voice calm but carrying weight. A moment later, the main screen lit up, revealing the leader of the Lutheran, Elder Varel. His eyes were sharp but tired, as if carrying centuries of responsibility. "Captain Ray," Varel began, "we have received your message of unity, but your arrival here changes everything. You have brought hope and risk. If you choose to help us, you will not be able to return home the same. Are your people ready for such a cost?" Ray didn't answer immediately. His crew looked to him, waiting for his decision. They had all come this far together through battles, mistrust, and the long silence between stars. Turning back now was not an option. Humanity, Ray said finally, has always stepped forward when it mattered. "We are ready." Varel studied him for a moment, then gave a slow nod. "Then it is decided. You will come aboard our flagship. We will speak as allies." The transfer to the alien vessel was unlike anything the crew had seen before. The docking bay was vast, its walls glowing faintly with streams of shifting light that pulsed like a heartbeat. As Ray stepped out, he noticed the Lutheran guards standing in silent formation. their armor gleaming. Lena walked beside him, her gaze scanning. Everything feels like walking into the heart of a living creature, she murmured. A tall figure approached Elder Varel himself. Follow me, he said simply, leading them through corridors that seemed to hum with energy. Finally, they entered the council chamber, a great circular room with a view of the galaxy beyond. Dozens of alien leaders sat in a wide circle, their expressions mixed, some curious, some doubtful. This is the human who answered the call, Varel announced. The meeting was long and heavy with questions. The council wanted to know why humanity had responded when so many other civilizations had ignored their distress. Because someone had to, Ray said. We've known darkness. We've seen war, hunger, and fear. But we've also seen that when people, no matter where they come from, stand together, they can change the impossible. You called for help. We came, some council members murmured among themselves. One, a stern figure named Sarath, stood. And what will humanity ask in return? Power? Territory? Influence? Ray shook his head. We ask for trust. We ask for friendship. And if possible, for a future where your people and ours can walk the stars together. The room went quiet later as the council debated in private. Ray and his team waited in a chamber overlooking the alien city that sprawled inside the ship's vast interior. Lena leaned on the railing, watching strange aerial craft move between tall crystalline towers. Do you think they'll say yes? She asked out. Ray looked out at the alien skyline. I think they already know their answer. They just have to accept it. Moments later, the chamber doors opened. Elder Varel stepped inside, a faint smile on his face. The council has reached its decision. He said, the Lutheran will not fight this war alone. From this day, our people and yours will be bound by a pact of protection. Together, we will defend the free worlds. Ray stood, extending his hand. Varel clasped it firmly. Then we stand as one. The following days were filled with preparations. Human ships and Lutheran vessels began training together, exchanging knowledge and strategies. The tension of the first meeting slowly shifted into something resembling camaraderie. One night, Ray stood alone on the observation deck of the horizon. Dawn. The stars seemed brighter now, as if the galaxy itself had heard the promise they made. Lena joined him quietly, holding 2 mugs of steaming drink. Do you think Earth is ready for this? She asked out. Ray took a slow sip before answering. They'll have to be. We've stepped into a larger galaxy now, and we're not alone anymore. They stood in silence, watching a formation of human and alien ships drift past together, their lights blending in the darkness.